Dr. Chen's latest project is an American international school in Shenzhen, China. He takes strong interest in the education in China, both professionally and personally. His life dream is to establish an LDS-based school for the Chinese people to prepare them to become faithful and effective leaders of the world. He is also a professor at the McKay School of Education at BYU, where he oversees China-related initiatives. Dr. Chen originated the idea of BYU China Conference and continued to serve as the faculty supervisor of the conference and the BYU Chinese Students and Scholar Association. So let's welcome Dr. Peter Chen.
Good morning. It's so good to see you all here. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm not the only presenter. I am here with my team here, Dr. Caroline Kwok, and also Casey Williams. I know Caroline is someplace here, okay. And we are so glad to be here. This is really a very interesting topic. Casey and Caroline approached me a while back and talked to me about this topic. I was so intrigued by it. I just thought that if we can really find the evidence that shows the connections between ancient Chinese and Abrahamic connections, that would be so great. There would be such a powerful thing that can prove to our Chinese people that the God that we believe in the Hebrew Bible is not just a God of the Westerners, but also of the Chinese people. For some time now, we have been researching and we found a lot of books, lots of ancient records that can really prove what we have been looking for. And there are really 5 areas of evidence that we identified. And they're imperial rites, the language, Chinese characters, legends, teachings, and recent discoveries. When we are talking about imperial rites, we are talking about some of the oldest practices in China. Now, to Chinese people, oftentimes, you ask, okay, who is the God of Chinese people? Even Chinese people may say that, oh, it must be a Buddha, or the Taoism, but they are not. The religion of the Chinese people comes much older than Taoism and Buddhism. It was called Shangdi worshipping, heaven worshipping. And Shangdi, for those of you who have served mission in in the Chinese realm, you know that is the same name that we use to address God in Judeo-Christianity. And that God actually also have a lot of similar characteristics that as the God that we believe in the Judeo-Christianity. And in our language, the Chinese language, the oldest form is called pictograms. And pictograms are kind of like right here. The mountain, the word that is from the mountain, looks like the mountain. The picture of the elephants is the foundation of the character of the foundation of the word. And so if you look at this character, this is the most common character when people are talking about the connection between the biblical stories and ancient China is this one. So this is a very simple illustration. The character boat, it comes from 3 different parts. One is the vessel. If you turn it, the other way, it really looks like a vessel. It looks like a boat, a ship. It has 8 people in it. And so what biblical story can you relate that to? The story of Noah and his family, isn't it? It has 8 people in there. And there are many other characters that illustrates that. And when you come to our concurrent session, Caroline will be talking to you more about that. And there are really many more characters that illustrate that. And also the legends. There are legends that are about the Great Flood that are recorded in many ancient Chinese classics, and also about our ancestors too. Listen to this quotation right here from Hugh Nibley, a Mormon scholar. He said the first ancestors of the Chinese, Fuxi, holds the set square as he rules the 4-cornered earth while his sister wife, Liu Wo, holds the compass pointing up as she rules the circling heavens. The phrase 规矩 is used by modern Chinese to signify the way things should be and moral standard. It literally means the compass and square. And there are also many Chinese ancient scripts and teachings that relate to the Bible. And when we are talking about Bible here, we are mostly referring to the Old Testament. And so it is really the same scriptures that the Hebrews as well as the Islams, they believe in. And there are also many recent discoveries that are very interesting. Like this one is called the tree of, some translations say called it the sacred tree or the tree of knowledge. It has, you can find the forbidden fruit, you can find the serpent, you can find a hand reaching out, for those fruits, and very, very interesting. And there are also DNA discoveries that talk about how Chinese really goes back to, and one DNA studies that talks about the 3 Neolithic super grandfathers of all Chinese people. And when we are talking about the Neolithic period, that is really the period of Abraham or even older. And so we all really go back to that same lineage. So when you are talking about just one set of evidence, you may be wondering, that this may be just speculations. But when we are talking about triangulative sets of evidence that all points to the same story, that tells us something. And so now I turn the time to Caroline. She'll expound on that. And at the end, towards the end of our presentation, you'll be seeing a trailer of the movie that we are planning to put together. Come, Caroline.
I graduated here many years ago, and I'm grateful to be here today. When I first went to Hawaii, I read a book by Hugh Newton, Lehi in the Desert and the Jaredites, and in there was a sentence that really caught my attention. He talks that the Jaredites are people that doesn't belong to what the American or the Western world really know. Okay. This is so high tech. I'm living in China now. I'm low tech, okay? No. And since then, in fact, I have been doing research on and off for over 30 years in this field. And Casey Williams have been doing that for 40 years. So between the 3 of us, we have about 80 years of interest in this field. But I was stuck. I could not go further on until I went into China. So I'm living in China now. And when I went into China, doors opened. And I believe many of my research had not been into China, I would have known all these, I would not have found all these things. Now I have 5 minutes, is that right? So I'll speak very fast. But then you can always come to my session. Briefly, the whole idea of teen heaven is so ingrained in our everyday life. Now the Mormons, I'm an LDS too, we always talk about family. But did you notice the second line, 天倫之樂, when we talk about family joy, it is heavenly relationship. That's what we're talking. We're not just talking about grandsons and grandkids. And also in the Chinese records, even back in these oracle bones and everything, the worshiping of heaven is the highest form of worship. Okay? Now, briefly, just to show you in the context of the Bible and the Chinese. So we have Abraham, blah, 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 all down to here about 2000 BC. That's around the beginning, a little bit early, the Shah dynasty, which is, one of the earliest dynasty. Now, I found this really interesting because in the Pearl of Great Price, it talks about the founding of Egypt. And those pharaohs in those days were good people. They were good guys. Interestingly, the first group of emperors, kings, and sovereigns in China, they are extremely righteous, extremely spiritual. If you have a chance to read some of the writings, you would think you're reading the Bible without the priesthood and all those. It's so very close to heaven. They have the book called The Inner Canon of the Yellow Emperor, Inner Canon, which a lot of people read, especially medical doctors in China. They always read this book. People think that this is a medical book. This is not. This is a book about relationship between heaven and earth. You need to be accountable to heaven, and you better do righteous thing on earth. This is what the Chinese think of a human being should be. And so there's a lot of these things that shows there are relationships. They are scattered all over. What I have found is they mingle the Genesis story, the Eden story with the Noah story. They're all crumbled up, so you had to take the pieces apart to find it. And finally, here's the quote from Hugh Nibley. It's true, people who wrote them, you're talking about these people back in the early days, were usually not very scientific, though sometimes they were. But in many cases, they knew a great deal more. And this I can testify. I have been reading books and books and books and books. And had I not studied the Bible and what I know from the Christian side of things, I would not be able to identify what is written in a Chinese record. And briefly, I think in the D&C, there's a scripture that says you have to preach the gospel in their own language. So unless we know the Chinese language, the Chinese culture, where all this came from, I think we will not be able to understand how God communicated with the Chinese. They did it in a very Chinese way. So I think that's all. Thank you very much.
My friends, I extend my regrets that I am unable to attend in person. It is, however, my great privilege to follow Doctors Caroline Kwok and Peter Chun, even if it is in this manner. I think I speak for most Westerners when I say that we are awed when looking at the written Chinese language. It is mysterious and beautiful, and it stirs the imagination. But without familiarity, it is alien and incomprehensible. The American alphabet has a mere 26 letters. The Chinese language is much more complex and intriguing. Whereas most written languages use letters of an alphabet to construct words, the Chinese written language uses radicals as the basic building block for creating words. Each character contains one or more radicals. The radicals, of which there are 214, are in turn organized according to the number of strokes required in writing them, anywhere from 1 to 17. Take, for example, the word for water. It is constructed by using 5 strokes. But if you add a single additional stroke, it becomes a compound radical with a whole new meaning. That single stroke gives life to the subject to which it is added. With that addition, water is now living water, which, being interpreted in Chinese, means eternal. As a young LDS missionary serving in Hong Kong in 1973 to 1975, I was astonished when I recognized the religious significance of that simple transformation and meaning of those characters. Could this be mere coincidence? Was I looking at this through the bias of my Mormon eyeglasses? Or was there a true connection between the Chinese written language and Judeo-Christian concepts? If so, what were their origins? I had to know. Thus began a 43-year journey of investigation for me. It has been my good fortune and my great honor to team with Doctors Caroline Kwok and Peter Chun. I invite you to join us in our search.